Hello, this is Miss Schrader. Today we are going to be talking about the Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi. Sometimes it's referred to as Qin Shi Huangdi. This is a picture of him. This is one of the more famous pictures of him. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. My students, I want you to take between 5 and 7 notes on this. You're going to be writing 5 to 7 sentences. Remember, you want a strong introduction and a strong conclusion. Okay, let's get started. This map is showing China as it looked during the Warring States ages, which is the period just before Qin Shi Huangdi comes into power. You should see that to the far left in the pink, there's this area called Qin, spelled Qin, and that is the territory that belonged to him originally. He inherited this piece from his father. His original name was Shao Cheng. That's the emperor's original name. And according to the stories, he devoured the rest of China like a mulberry worm chews up mulberry leaves. So, very voraciously, slowly but surely, starting from the time he was a teenager, well into his 30s, he is busily fighting and conquering all the other areas. And one of the things he is most famous for is the uniting of China. In fact, his name, Qin Shi Huangdi or Qin Shi Huangdi, basically means the first emperor of China. Having brought all of China under his control, one of the earliest things that he did was he ended the feudalism system in China. Now, hopefully, you remember that in Europe, the king would give land to a lord who would then give the king loyalty. The lord would then give land to knights who would give the lord loyalty. The knights would give land to the peasants who would give the knights food, which would be passed forward. But this system, feudalism, gives a lot of power to lords and knights. And Qin Shi Huangdi didn't like that. He wanted a system in which the emperor has all of the power. So he destroyed the feudalistic system and starts a system of legalism. Legalism, I'm repeating it so that you understand a little bit more. And basically, it is saying that the laws are set up in a certain way and everyone has to follow them. And there's a truly terrifying story that goes with this. One night, the emperor is sitting on his throne and he has fallen asleep and he is shivering. The person whose job it is to make the fire comes in, notices that the emperor is shivering, puts the emperor's blanket over him, and then leaves the room. The emperor awakens, looks around, calls out, demands to know who put the blanket on him. And he was told, yeah, the guy whose job it is to make the fires did that. This guy is brought in, he admits to it, he is killed because he did something that was not his job. His job is to make the fires, not to put the blankets on people. And similarly, the guy whose job it is to put the blanket on the emperor was also killed. So this new system of legalism, it is extremely strict. And yeah, if you don't follow it, the emperor will have you killed. Because of his ruthless nature, both in war and in life, several attempts were made to assassinate Qin Shi Huangdi. This is a picture that was actually done, I think, during his lifetime, certainly close to that, in which an attempt is being made to assassinate him. As time goes by, this affects him. He becomes very, very paranoid. He will refuse to sleep in the same place overnight. He is constantly looking for some means of prolonging his life so he will live forever. So it really has an effect on him in the long run. One of the things that Qin Shi Huangdi is famous for is standardizing Chinese characters, so they're all the same, and unifying weights and measures. China has over 6,000 dialects, and so it's lots of different ways in which people could speak, but they've got only one written language. So depending on what your dialect is, you may struggle to comprehend someone or be understood talking to them. But if you are putting things in writing, it would be the same no matter what your dialect would be. With weights and measures, you should notice that when you're buying something, the weight has to be the same as what you imagine it to be. Otherwise, you may be paying more than is necessary. So we standardized all of this stuff, which made it a lot easier for people to do business and things like that. The next thing I want you to notice is his name written here, Qin Shi Huangdi, literally meaning the first emperor of China. The Qin part is the very first part. You'll notice it is spelled with a Q. This is an attempt to Europeanize Chinese writing, which I'm going to admit I don't really understand. One of the things that Qin Shi Huangdi is famous for is the Great Wall of China. There are a lot of people who will tell you, oh, yeah, he built the Great Wall or he had the Great Wall built. That's not actually true. At the time that he became the emperor of all of China, in the northern part of those Chinese territories, they had walls to keep the people north of them, called the Huns in those days, or today the Mongolians, from coming in and robbing and stealing and things like that. And what he did was he simply arranged to connect all of those pieces of wall to make one great big wall. And you can see from this picture, you see the red lines that are kind of jaggedy. These are the various different pieces of wall that were being used. The Chinese actually did not like the Great Wall of China in those days. They saw it as something that if your relatives are sent there to work on that, they'll die there and they will never be seen again. As a matter of fact, it is referred to as the world's longest cemetery because the theory is that if someone was working on the wall and they died, their body would just be dumped into the center part and buried over. We do not actually know whether that's true or not. The parts of the Great Wall that were built by Qin Shi Huangdi were built from local materials wherever they happened to be. So if there's a lot of clay, that's what they were using, and things like that. If you were to be able to follow the Great Wall of China all the way through from the east to the west, you would find that in the western parts, like here in this picture at Dunhuang, the Great Wall is falling apart. It's not very great in these areas. The touristy parts of the Great Wall of China, like the ones you're looking at here, are on the east coast of China, and they were actually rebuilt during the Ming Dynasty in the 15th and 16th century. So they have been rebuilt in stone, and these are the parts that your tourists get to go and see. They're only several hundred years old. The other thing that Qin Shi Huangdi is famous for are the terracotta warriors that you can see here. Contrary to what modern movies say, they are not buried underneath the Great Wall of China and they don't come to life to protect or harm something. So that's just for the movies. But Qin Shi Huangdi was afraid that in the afterlife he was going to have to fight in wars. And he did want to make sure that his soldiers fought with him, were on his side. But he was also concerned that if he had his warriors killed when he died in order to have them buried with him, they might not like him so much while he was alive and they might hold it against him. And so he came up with this very clever plan of having these terracotta clay warriors, they're life size, built and prepared as though they were in marching order to fight. And these will fight for him in the afterlife. So his living soldiers don't have to worry because they were not going to be killed to go with him into the afterlife. So Qin Shi Huangdi's grave, as well as the terracotta warriors, are in Central Asia, or Central China, excuse me, near the town of Xi'an. This is the area that he was originally from. This is part of the original kingdom of Qin. So this is Lishan, the burial place of Qin Shi Huangdi. It is a man-made mountain. So all the green trees and things, those have grown up over 2,000 years since his death. Exactly what is buried with him in his tomb is unknown. The terracotta warriors are a couple miles away, but they have been concerned about trying to get into the tomb because of the fear of Indiana Jones type booby traps that might be put in place, and also for fear of damaging any of the things that are supposedly in there. But the stories about it say that what's in there is very, very grand and beautiful. Supposedly, the sky is shown as having a sky above it made of diamonds, and that there is a river of mercury supposedly flowing through it. And we sincerely hope that someday they will open it up and let us see what's inside. But going back to the warriors themselves, there are about 2,000 warriors and horses that have been discovered, and they haven't finished searching, so they continue to try and find them. The belief is that each different soldier is different from the other ones because they represent different ethnic groups within Qin's empire. So each one is slightly different, at least, than the other ones. They were made on an assembly line type situation. And apparently, when they were originally made, they had bright colors on them, very shiny and things like that. And when they were discovered, having been underground for so long, the paint immediately just flaked away and fell away. You can see in this picture that one of the soldiers doesn't have his head. None of the soldiers were found intact. The years and things had damaged all of them, and they were all pretty much crumbled. Today, when you go to the museum to see them, you don't get to go up close, but they have been realigned basically close to where they were, and they have been repaired and put back together. And you're looking down in a series of pits to see them. Originally, all of the soldiers were given actual real weapons to carry into the afterlife. After Qin Shi Huangdi's death in 210 BCE, there was a peasant revolt against his family, and his empire came to an end. It had only been in power for about 22 years, so it was a very short dynasty. A new dynasty came into being called the Han. But let's go back to the rebellion. We got a lot of peasant farmers who are rising up, but they don't have weapons. But they remember that when the terracotta soldiers were buried, all of them had real weapons. So they dig into the caverns where the terracotta warriors are hidden, and they take out the weapons, and they use them to bring down Qin Shi Huangdi's dynasty. In time, the terracotta warriors became the story of myth and legend. People didn't really believe in them. But in 1974, a farmer digging a well dug up bits and pieces of a terracotta warrior. And this caused archaeologists to come and start digging there and finding all of these huge number of terracotta warriors. Archaeologists have been working on the site ever since. At some point, they found these sets of carriages like the one you see here. These are not life size. These are made of bronze. I would say they are perhaps a quarter life size. I mean, they're fairly small. Two people could carry them around, but they were buried intentionally in the ground surrounding the terracotta warriors, and the exact purpose behind them is not known. Now, this picture of Qin Shi Huangdi may have been done during his lifetime or close to it, so they may actually have a fairly good likeness of him here. He has one of the shortest dynasties in China's history, and yet he is responsible for creating two of the great tourist sites of the 21st century, the Great Wall of China and the Terracotta Warriors. So he's very, very famous, despite the fact that he was really not a very nice guy. My students, you are going to be writing me between 5 and 7 sentences about him and the things that he did. You want to make sure you have a strong introductory sentence, and I hope that everybody else enjoys it. Thank you. Bye-bye.